Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. Oh my gosh, we are on episode 10 of season 2 of Bungo Stray Dogs. I've loved this season. I love this show. I really liked season 1. I did. And from episode 7 on in season 1, I really liked it. Episode 12 was a great capstone to the first season, but ever since episode 1, this season has not let up at all. I mean, I liked episodes 5 and 6 when we got back into the main storyline. They were great, but episodes 7, 8, and 9, and then the Dark Age arc, the first 4 episodes, chef's kiss. I have loved this series, and I'm so excited to get into. We're in the home stretch now of season 2. Last episode kicked off the final act of this season, and I hated Crunchyroll because it was lagging, but it doesn't matter because it was still an amazing episode, and going back and rewatching it, like, just all what I love. I think I was talking to my brother about this, and because he was asking me if I was liking Bungo Stray Dogs, and I'm like, yes, I really like it. But what I told him is, in season 1, we thought that the Port Mafia was like Team Rocket from Pokemon. We're like, oh, they're just a normal, everyday thing. We just got to deal with this as the agency. And then once you get to season 2, you're like, no, they are a legit organization that are quite capable of causing damage. And my brother was like, yeah, but when they're day-to-day against the agency, it's no big deal. But you bring in the guild and it's a foreign threat. And I'm like, exactly, that's the thing. The guild is trying to get on their turf, and that's what causes the problem. So Mori continues to be a fascinating character. The president has my curiosity with his ability. And I'm just going to say it. I'm going to throw this out here. And I told my brother this, and he just walked away. And I was like, no, okay. He was like, I'm not telling you anything. And I was like, okay. So in the last episode, there are 2 things that stuck out to me that I didn't get a chance to talk about in the reaction. And by the time this recording is out, y'all probably have seen the episode, so it won't matter. Or you guys have probably commented about this, so it's whatever. The one thing I noticed was that we didn't get a resolution with Ango. In episode 7, the car crashed into him, and Dazai had his arm in the sling. His arm was in the sling this last episode, and then episode 8, we didn't get any resolution on the Ango storyline. That just hit me today. I was like, okay, I'm going to watch Bungo Stray Dogs, and I went back and rewatched episode 9, because it had been a good week. And I was like, oh, wait, we didn't get any resolution with Ango. Where did he go? So I'm curious about that. And I'm sure that by now you guys have noted that in the comments, but as I'm recording this, I have no clue. So I'm like, where did Ango go? So that was the first thing. And here's the second thing. Elise Chan has been an enigma to me since she appeared, because she's this little freaky demonic child. She doesn't look like she's aged in the last 4 years, which is weird. And there was a line the president said last episode. He said, you think just like a little girl. Is Mori's power the little girl? Is Elise Chan his ability? I don't know. I looked at my brother, I'm like, so wait. I was like, don't spoil me, but I'm like, is Elise Chan Mori's power? And my brother was like, bye. I was like, what does that mean? But the only reason I think of that is I'm a huge Bleach fan, or I was a big Bleach fan back in the day. And so all I could think of that was Kenpachi, and the girl in that story is his sword. It's his Zanpakuto, his ability. And I'm like, it would kind of make sense if she was tied to his ability, because she doesn't age. Her thought process seems connected to his. And she knows his real name. And she's the only one that calls him by his real name. And she's just always with him, or she's not there at all. She's like, there. I'm like, who's her babysitter, right? Who would babysit that demonic offspring? So I was like, is she his power? But then how does that work? Because he used a scalpel to kill the former mafia boss. And he said in the one episode, in episode 12, he was like, if I was younger, in my younger days, I'd use my ability left and right to mow enemies down. And she's like, you're too old for that. I'm like, how would you know? So I don't know. But when he said that line, rewatching the episode, when he's like, you think just like a little girl, I'm like, is Elise tied to his power? I don't know. But that's just been in the back of my mind. That, and where's Ango? What happened with those 2 characters? We have not seen Elise Chan in quite some time. So where is she? But then also he's giving her real things like real food and dresses. So can an ability manifest itself like that? I don't know. But in any case, this episode seems like a 2-parter. It seems Poe versus Rampo. And I was so elated by the ending of last episode. It didn't dawn on me the title Poe versus Rampo. I was like, wait, are we getting Edgar Allen Poe? didn't even dawn on me. And so now I'm like super hyped up because I'm like, oh, are we getting Edgar Allan Poe in this show? Cool. And also the Moby Dick. So we're going to get some Melville focus, and it looks like some Rampo focus. Exciting stuff. But also, some of you have been commenting if I'm going to research Chuya. Well, after last episode, Double Black, I feel like I need to because we got some definite information on Chuya. So I actually researched him, Chuya Nakahara, and his whole backstory is super interesting. I've got a new setup, so I'm looking up here now to the computer screen. But Chuya Nakahara was the firstborn son of a doctor and his wife, and they'd been trying to have kids for a long time. And so when he was born, they like literally had a 3-day celebration for his birth because he was like the only baby born in this town. And so his father, being a doctor, wanted him to take his place and follow in his footsteps, which I find fascinating because Mori's the doctor in this series. So I'm like, is Mori setting up Chuya to be his replacement now that Dazai's out of the picture? That's interesting to me. I don't know if Chuya doesn't have the prowess, I think, that like Dazai does to be a leader of the Port Mafia, but he might be setting him up. I don't know. Or maybe that was the plan to set him up from the start and then Chuya didn't go along with it because the actual Chuya, his father wanted him to become a doctor like him, and Chuya was like, nah, I don't want to. And then his 8-year-old brother died when they were children, and to deal with his grief, he turned to literature and poetry, and he started writing poetry as a grieving process. So I found that really interesting. And so I like that Chuya also, it said that his father wanted him to go to doctorate school, and Chuya consistently, purposefully failed the exam so he wouldn't get a chance to go. And instead he became a poet. And his poetry is noted for being very melancholy, having a lot of pain and emotions that were constant through the poet's life. So he didn't have a very good life. He had a lot of emotional trauma from his growing up. And then he got married in his 30s, and he actually got married in his 20s, and he lived to only be 30. So a lot of these writers didn't live very long, which is really, really sad. And Chuya being one of them. But his poetry was noted to be very surrealist and kind of avant-garde and very emotional and dealing with a lot of pain and trauma that kind of reflected his life, which I find very interesting. And then Upon the Tainted Sorrow is derived from his poem titled This Soiled Sorrow, which is published in 1934, which is a few years before his death, only 3 years before his death. And then the verses in the poetry, the precursor to them is actually about corruption, are lines taken from the counterpart poem Lament of the Lamb, or Song of the Sheep, which was written by Nakahara to someone. And I find the whole Lament of the Lamb, that whole thing, to be interesting because in his childhood, his father, to punish him, would make Nakahara sleep in a sheep barn as punishment. Like he'd make him sleep outside in a barn. So I wonder if that whole like connecting to the grief and everything and to the corruption is kind of tracing back, just like in the real life Nakahara, tracing back to his pain of being exiled to that barn, is kind of like a similar situation. So that's very interesting. Very cool stuff with Chuya. I like it. I like it a lot. There wasn't any mention. It's not like Oda and Ango and Dazai are all like poets and writers that were friends. Chuya doesn't seem quite related to that, but as you all have noted, there is clearly some shipping going on. I'm just saying. So I find that very, very fascinating. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited. We'll get to start episode 10 here of our season 2. So let's do it, shall we? All right, and we are going to start episode 10 here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, there's so much hype with this episode. Oh my gosh. This episode went by actually pretty quickly. I was surprised, which when it's a two-parter like that, you're like, okay, half the episode's gonna be this one part and half the episode's gonna be the other. But I was surprised how fast the Rampo and Poe part went. And then leading up into, it's just exactly like episode 11 of last season, only we're an episode early. So it's just like episode 11 where we get the first little mini arc here with Rampo. And I like that because it's kind of like if we're following the manga, it's like what the mangaka was like, well, what was Rampo doing during this time? Well, he was finding another guild member and battling him to get intel. So it's like, cool. And then this second half, too, was showing Dazai and Rampo working together, which I really like. Seeing Ango, and then ending up with, the final boss of this season is Fitzgerald. And it's like, oh my god! So there a lot to talk about this episode. I want to go back and rewatch it, though, because there's a lot happening fast-paced, a lot of reading that I was, like, trying to, like, soak in the moment. But to think the guild would send me a challenge request. I like that Yasano goes with Rampo. I like that. It makes sense that they want to keep Rampo safe because Rampo is not actually gifted, as he finds out this episode, or as it's confirmed. And I want to talk about that because Rampo may have stole my heart this episode. Like Rampo's always been kind of arrogant and had that just vibe of being a know-it-all, but this episode, I was like, oh no, he was like a cinnamon bun this episode. I felt so bad for him. To Edgar Rampo, invitation for a detective game. Yeah, it's a trap. So I like that it makes sense that they send Yasano with him because they want to keep him safe because he's the foundation of the agency. He's the important member that can solve things. So we need him. So it says, well, I wanted to read these cards because I couldn't read them in the moment. It was going back too fast. Welcome, Rampo-kun. A is B, A is not B. Fill in A and B so that both hold true and enter the room. So it's like just this puzzle. I definitely know who I'm researching next episode, and that's going to be Edgar Allen Poe, which I love Edgar Allen Poe. I've not heard of the short story or whatever, or poem that his thing is based off of, though. So that's curious. Like, I like Edgar Allen Poe, like Mask of the Red Death, like Telltale Heart, The Raven, lots of other little short stories and poetry, but I'm not so familiar with this one. I love his design, though. He kind of looks like Dazai a little bit. And then he has the raven feather, which is the quill. That's a nice touch. And then this random raccoon. Why? But the chief architect of the guild, E.A. Poe, Edgar Allan Poe. So just like Rampo is kind of the architect of the agency, he's the founder of the guild. Ability, Black Cat in the Rue Morgue. I've heard of Black Cat, but Black Cat in the Rue Morgue. Interesting. And his ability puts people into novels. That's cool. That's cool. I like his character design an awful lot. And the sentence is 5 words, the sentence is not 5 words. And then I like that they just kind of have this little cat and mouse with each other, and the whole reveal of Rampo being the murderer is interesting. And here's the fascinating thing. Like, this is what's fascinating about it, is that he doesn't end up having his glasses with him, so he's like, oh, I can't use my ability. And Yasano, giving props to Yasano, because she's like, oh, but Rampo, can't you use your detective ability? He's like, I don't have my glasses. And she's like, can't you do it anyway? I really love that thing, that the line here. Also, Rampo looks quite good in traditional garb. Just going to point that out. But they were special glasses given to me by the boss. So the president gave him the glasses for his ability. And I love that she's just like, because later when she confronts him about it, it's so sad when he's like, why would the boss lie to me? And it's like, because he respects the president so much, and the fact that he's like, why would he lie and say that I'm gifted when I'm not? And she's like, damage control. And so at the end of it all, he takes her glasses and uses them. So it's clear that Rampo knows he's not gifted, and I like that Yasano tries to confront him about it. She's like, well, look at it this way. You've gotten to agree that you're not gifted. He's like, no, I'm gifted. He's like, I'm gifted. No. He's like, because if I admit that I'm not gifted, then I'm going to look stupid after all this time doing the thing with the glasses. And I like that she's like, as arrogant as ever, keeping up appearances, fine, whatever. I love that. That's so wonderful. I just love that whole thing. And the fact that Poe and Rampo had this past doing detective games against one another. Like, I want to see their past. I want to see them do more detective things back and forth. It's very Sherlock and Moriarty. I want to see more of that. I really, really liked that. And then, yeah, I like that Yasana kind of understands him a little bit more. And she just kind of acknowledges, like, yeah, okay, I'm glad we're all on equal terms about this. So, yeah, then we have the second half of this episode, although it wasn't really the second half. It was kind of like past half. I like the idea of Dazai and Rampo working together and seeing their dynamic, and Dazai being pseudo-serious, because he's still, like, he's not, like, Dazai Deadeye serious like he is with Ango, and we'll talk about that scene later. But he's got the little gleam in his eye, but he is serious about, they get the information of what the weakness is for the guild, and the weakness is the Moby Dick. The ship is the weakness, because that's the mobile base, right? So that's what gets them from point A to point B. So I like this dynamic with Dazai and Rampo. I like that both of them are just arrogant enough but they're both smart enough and arrogant enough that they bounce ideas off of one another. And Dazai is a very smart, intelligent planner, but Rampo is just a little bit better than him at deduction because that's his gift, right? So I like that Dazai kind of bounces ideas off of him and Rampo kind of shuts him down or says, oh yeah, that'll work. And then they decide to use Atsushi to go infiltrate the whale. And it makes sense why they choose Atsushi, because he's got the best ability to go in there. He knows the ship. All of Dazai's reasoning makes sense. My question is, did Dazai really suspect that Akutagawa would show up or not? Because he acts like he didn't suspect that Atsushi would. He tells Atsushi that he's going to be alone, but I'm like, did he realize Mori was going to send Akutagawa? Did he? Did he account for that and he sent Atsushi anyway, or what? Like, that's the one aspect we don't know about Dazai, is how privy was Dazai really to Mori's plans? Because Dazai and Mori are very similar, and it makes sense that they both send their subordinates, their trump cards. Mori's is Akutagawa, and Dazai's is Atsushi, so they send their trump cards to go take care of the guild together. So I'm like, did they both kind of suspect that each other would do that? Or not? That is the question. That's what I'm curious about. So we got Steinbeck. Steinbeck somehow got away. I don't know how he got away from all of them, but he did. So that's interesting. So Steinbeck somehow got away. We aren't privy to that. So that's my one thing. I'm like, how did he get away? So I'm curious to know if we're going to find that out or not. Or if they think that Steinbeck was taken into Mafia's custody, what the deal is. But he got away, and then we have Mark Twain with Lucy. You've got gall betraying the guild. I wish I had your courage. And so the countermeasures to her ability, I like that we have. So in this, we see that his grapevines have invaded her world and tied the doll up. She's like, well, I had to do it because that was the only way he was going to leave. He wouldn't have escaped if I hadn't. And Steinbeck, someone in the comments, and I think on Patreon too, I think it was maybe Anastasian on Patreon, commented that Steinbeck is creepier than Lovecraft. And I agree. Lovecraft is like a general creepy, scary, like the creepy thing about Lovecraft is that his power isn't an ability. He's just like an unearthly creature. Like, that's the scary thing about Lovecraft. With Steinbeck, the creepy thing is he can have these soft moments like this where he's like, it's not easy being the bad guys. And he just seems like so like, I'm so sorry that we're probably gonna have to kill you, Lucy. And he's so genuine about it. But that's the creepy part, is that he's just like, it's not easy being the bad guys. Guess you have to die now. And he's just not remorseful. It's just part of an everyday job. Like, that's what's creepy about Steinbeck, is the normalcy that he gives all of this. And then he's like, so Chief Strategist, what's the plan? And I like that Luis is like, she's like gripping the helicopter like, I don't want to tell you the plan because it's really bad. Like, I actually really like her character a lot. I think I'm surprised they have an architect in addition to her. But she's a strategist, so it's like, So I'm curious to know her ability completely explained, but we haven't got there yet. But yeah, so we don't know what's going to happen with Lucy. We don't know. They've got her in custody. Steinbeck somehow escaped from whoever had him in custody, which his ability would make it very easy for him to escape. I'm wondering, I'm eventually going to read the manga, and so I'm wondering if that's going to give me any ideas about that. But We have Dazai visiting Ango in the hospital with his giant bouquet of flowers. And it looks like they're roses and daisies and baby's breath. Which is like, roses and daisies and baby's breath. And then the basket of, it looks like, I don't know what that giant, it looks like a one-piece devil fruit. That giant fruit, and then the apples and oranges. But he's just like, oh, hey, I've got good news. And poor Ango is just like in a full body cast, like in the neck brace and everything, and his leg broke. Yeah, and he's like, I'm going to give you to Yasano, and she's going to heal you. It's like, oh God, Ango, honey, you don't even know. What do you want in return? One of the detectives in the agency was captured by the military police, which would be Kyoka, and we want to save her before our grand battle with the guild. And he's like so chipper about it all. And Ango doesn't even acknowledge her. Ango, very similar to Kunikita, does not acknowledge her. He's like, oh, the killer of 35. Yeah, she is being kept in an unmanned plane used to quarantine dangerous gifted. And that's the plane that Akutagawa infiltrates, right? So I'm curious to know if he let her escape or what the deal was. And they're like, we're thinking about cooperating, but only if she's truly a member of the agency. And that's where Dazai like I brought you a basket of fruit and everything. And then that's when Atsushi asks, she's not a member, and Tanizaki, I like that there is this entrance examination. We go back to season 1. He's like, no, you have to pass the entrance exam to be in the agency. You passed the entrance exam when you battled me. And so I know that there's a light novel that talks about Dazai's entrance exam, and I actually think I might read it. I might try to read it this week. I think I have the English translation saved. I think some of you sent it to me. I might try to read it before getting into episode 11. Might try to read that and then talk about it for episode 11. That might be fun. But yeah, and I might not get to it because it's pretty crazy right now with my schedule, but I'm going to try to read it this week and see if I can, or at least before episode 11. But yeah, so you have to become, in order to become a detective, you have to pass the entrance exam. And that's, unless you pass the test, you're not officially accepted as an employee. And Kyoka hasn't passed the test. So I wanted to hear what he said here about it, because Atsushi's clearly thinking about that. And then, but we don't get that yet, because Ango says, Dazai-kun, I accept your offer of treatment in exchange for my cooperation. But here's the thing. So tell me something. When the unidentified car rammed into us, so they don't know who it was, they don't know who rammed into them. For some reason, my airbag was the only one that didn't deploy. You know the reason. And that look, oh my gosh, that look, that devilish look, oh my God. So, the question is, did Dazai intend for Ango to be killed? He looked shocked when that unmanned car came and got them, but the airbag didn't deploy. So it's like, is Dazai being like, well, you're responsible for my friend dying, so, just wanted to see if luck would be on your side or not. Like one of those looks. That expression, oh my God, anytime Dazai makes that murder face, that Mori-like murder face, it's just, it's the creepiest thing in the show. And there's no explanation. There's just no explanation at all. It's like, so Dazai has not forgiven Ango, clearly. And that look on his face when Ango was explaining about Kyoka, Dazai's like, look, the girl needs to survive. She has an ability. She's not a murderer. You know as good as I do that the Port Mafia is the reason why she's killed these people, because it's their doing. He's like, don't try to, be neutral on this. And I can tell that Dazai gets so frustrated with Ango because Ango plays by the book. He plays by the rules that are put in front of him. So whatever the special ops tell him, he's going to do. And Dazai, you can tell, is so frustrated by that because there's probably a part of him that's like, if you hadn't played by the rules and hadn't done what you were told, then Oda probably would still be alive. So he's probably resentful for that. And that face. Oh my God. So then, this part here where Tanazaki's like, the entrance exam involves observing the applicant's behaviors. That's the main thing, to determine whether they're suitable for the agency. So the big question is, it's a secret test. So whenever Kyoko-chan is in danger, she seeks escape by hurting or doing away with someone. That's the thing. That may be her nature. If that's the case, she may not pass the entrance exam. So I'm wondering if this whole situation with the Moby Dick and the unmanned aircraft and all this, if they're going to use that, if Dazai's going to find a way to use that as Kyoko's entrance exam. That would be really cool. If Kyoko's on the unmanned aircraft that's on the Moby Dick, if they use that as her entrance exam, they're like, okay, she's in a high pressure situation with a member of the agency and a member of the port mafia. What is she going to do? If she's pushed into a corner, is she going to kill someone, or is she actually going to step down, or is she going to be of help? That might be it. Dazai may use that as her entrance exam, and Atsushi would be a witness because he's part of the agency. So that would be really cool if they did it that way to prove that she's more than just what... Because here's the funny thing. Akutagawa has been her caretaker, and he's told her that she's good for nothing but killing people in the port mafia because that's all Akutagawa's been told. It's like this vicious cycle. And Atsushi is starting a new cycle with, you know, the reformed mind of Dazai, who's been influenced by Oda. So it'll be curious to see if Akutagawa is going to try to convince her that she's only good for killing, and Akutagawa's like, no, or Atsushi's like, no, you're not. You could do good working with the agency, and if that's going to be the true test and who she responds to, whether it's Akutagawa or Atsushi. I'm thinking it's going to be Atsushi, but very, very curious. Very curious indeed. And so we get into the secret organization here, them pushing the book back in. I just love this world where there's all these secret passageways and secret assignments and things like that, and leading them to the secret agency helicopter and all of that, and then them going up into the Moby Dick. And of course, I love the visual of while Atsushi is sitting there, that, again, that church and the guy in the orphanage, you're the runt of the orphanage until the day you die. And him just like putting that pressure on him, but Atsushi worked past it. He's like, no, I'll do it. Like, I'm not going to be tied down by my past. I'm going to do it because it's to save Kyoko, who he has that connection to. I've only ever regretted the things I didn't do. Yep. So he's like, this is not going to be one of those things. I love it. But yeah, here's the deal. And of course, Akutagawa shows up. Oh my God, I love it. So then we have the Moby Dick. And God, that glass ceiling, that's terrifying. I can't do a glass ceiling when it's like Chicago or something like that, like the cities that have the big glass ceilings. I can't do that. No, I'm not scared of heights. I'm only scared of heights if I know that there's something unsafe about it, and that just seems unsafe. The glass floor there, not ceiling. So I like the idea of Melville going down with the ship. The captain goes down with the ship. I like that idea, and it looks like him and Fitzgerald are the main ones that are left. There's probably some guards or soldiers there to kind of protect the Moby Dick, but it's mainly Melville and Fitzgerald. And everybody else is going to be on the ground having a battle. And of course, the chief strategy is, we're just going to make the ship a bomb. Let's just do it. We're just going to blow up the whole city. We're going to destroy the guild. We're going to destroy the agency. We're going to destroy the port mafia. Everything along with the Moby Dick. Like, all of it. And I like this concept that Melville says that Moby Dick was eventually flesh, and it's slowly become metal and mechanical over time. Like, it's just been altercated and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just been, not articulated, but it's just been transformed over time into something it wasn't originally. And I like that the guild members, they're like just going into ground zero in the car, doing that jazz. They'll crash in less than an hour. Oh my God. Of course. And then Melville's like, yeah, Moby Dick's my special ability, but it's been augmented. That's the word I was looking for. It's been augmented. 70% of its capacity has been replaced with other people's orders, so I can't control it now. It's out of my hands. And then Dazai, of course, hears all of that. But here's the thing. We can't fully trust, and this is where I get into the questioning of how much did Dazai predict would happen ahead of time. Because he's like, no, you're going to stay on the ship and get the mission accomplished. And Atsushi's like, I like that. What? Dazai's like, I kind of thought that maybe this was a possibility, so you're the only one on the Moby Dick. You're the only one who can do it. And Atsushi's like, of course you'd predict this situation. But yeah, that was part of the reason for choosing you, because you can handle it. And Atsushi's like, well, I don't really have a choice, do I? What do I need to do to stop the descent? You'll have to use the control terminal. And of course, it's in the office on the highest floor, like every boss battle would be. And it's well guarded. And there's damn Fitzgerald standing there in front of that window like, oh my God, amazing. Ugh. And so she's like, okay, I'm off. If everyone's evacuated, why are you still here? And yeah, this is when he says he go down with the ship. And I wanted to get to that line he said, if Moby Dick is to fall on foreign land and cause annihilation, I ought to fall with it. And this line that Melville says, I think is really important. When he talks about the ship, he says, Moby Dick was a beautiful creature before its flesh became mechanical. Just as the guild was in its past. So there's a curious connection here, because I'm thinking back to the last episode when Mori was talking with the leader of Black Lizard, and when they were talking about things of the past and how it is now. And it almost seems like a reverse of the Port Mafia, because the Port Mafia was mechanical and the old boss was just controlling things and making people just kill indiscriminately and hurting the organization. And then Mori came in and took him out of the picture and made the organization more human and connected in a way, in a weird, disturbing, dark way. And so Mori did that, but this seems like the reverse of this. This guy seems kind of like the guild's version of the Black Lizard leader, where he's like, yeah, this guild used to be a flesh and blood organization that had feelings and connections, and now it's just a mechanical, we're all just cogs in the wheel, and Fitzgerald's controlling it. And I think that's really fascinating, that they're all just part of Fitzgerald's plan. They don't really have any autonomy. It's very autonomous. They don't have any identity or any individuality. They're all just part of Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald owns them. And so they don't really have their own self-identity, which is interesting. So, yeah, and Atsushi's the one to hear that. Our protagonist gets to hear all sides of the story. And so he goes off. And then I find it curious that it's Mori calling Dazai. I find it very curious. It's like, how are you, Dazai-kun? And Dazai just being like, you're the last person I want to talk to. Didn't we establish an agreement with the Mafia so they wouldn't obstruct our operations? And he's like, well, yeah, we did. I just had a call from one of my subordinates who doesn't follow orders and doesn't listen very well. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Oopsie daisy. And then, of course, it's Akutagawa. And he's like, the were-tiger. I want another Naoki's moment. Do I ship Akutagawa and Atsushi? Kind of. Kind of. I kind of do, because they're so similar. But Akutagawa is so yandere. It's like, just get over so much stuff and you'll be much better. But, oh my gosh, this episode was so good at setting so much stuff up. So much stuff up for next episode. I feel like this may be a good moment of growth for Akutagawa and a good moment of growth for Kyoka. For Kyoka to use her power to help save people rather than just cause destruction. But also for Akutagawa to realize that we're not so different, you and I, Atsushi. We're a tiger. We could maybe work together. You don't like Fitzgerald. I don't like Fitzgerald. We could work together to stop him, perhaps. Who knows? But yeah, Dazai, y'all love Dazai, and I see why. He's so fascinating. And it's not that I love Mori, but I find Mori's character so interesting. It's like one of those villains that you like want to delve deeper into and understand more. And with Dazai's motivations, and he's so sinister, and it's kind of like he can't help but be sinister. Like the whole disabling Ango's airbag in his car. I'm like, that's just, it's fiendish, but it's in Dazai's character, especially knowing Ango's role in Oda's death and how important Oda was to Dazai. So, yep, there you go. But guys, Rashomon, the Tiger, and the Last Emperor. Which is interesting because Fitzgerald said that by having the were-tiger, they would take back the Holy Land. I don't understand what that is yet. I'm assuming we're going to find out. And that maybe Fitzgerald is suggesting that he's the last emperor and it's something tied to the guild in its past. I'm so curious. But we had episode 10 of season 1 was Rashomon and the Tiger. And now episode 11 in season 2 is Rashomon the Tiger and the Last Emperor. So I'm pretty hyped, y'all. I'm so hyped. And it's the episode before the season finale. It's a penultimate episode. So usually those are like, stuff gets crazy. In season 1, it was surprisingly low key, but I have a feeling in this episode, it's going to be a little bit more tense. So, because this was kind of like the penultimate episode last season. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers, but I'm so curious to know what you thought. But yeah, this is going to be exciting. So I can't wait. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 11 of Bungo Stray Dogs Season 2.